Wireless Fundamentals, Understanding Wireless Antennas. By the time we're done here, you will understand the types of wireless antennas available and know how to read antenna radiation patterns. Well, good grief. In the previous nugget, I said, we are done with wireless fundamentals. Let's go on site. And I did. I actually drove out to the customer location and recorded all the footage that we need for our initial site survey. And it wasn't until I was walking through the hallways and figuring out where the wireless access points would go that I thought to myself, I haven't talked at all about the different antenna options that you have. Oh, I've got to do that. And so that's why this nugget is here, is I want to talk about the radio and the antenna, because most people combine them together to say, they just do the same thing. The radio, transmits and receives data, and the antenna radiates that data. But there's actually a key difference between the two. You can change the antenna. The radio is fixed. And just because you can change the antenna means that you have options when it comes to where your wireless signal will go. See, when we're talking about something like a walkie-talkie, most of the time we're good with an omnidirectional antenna, meaning one that just receives signal from wherever it's coming from. Because when it comes to the world of walkie-talkies, we don't know where those signals are coming from. It could be from any side, any angle. But when it comes to wireless networks, that may not always be the case. Within the last year, my son got into baseball. He's 6 years old, and so I'm now the coach of a Little League baseball team, which I am not a baseball guy, and I'm learning as fast as I can. And we just a couple nights ago played this team where they had this first baseman that had a massive glove. It wasn't quite this big, but I remember I was standing there and I talked to the other coach. I'm like, hey man, is that legal? Because he was literally like a ball magnet. Everything went there. And he goes, yep, totally legal. We can do that. And he said, but I wouldn't use that kind of glove for most of the other players because they need a lot more agility to move around and move quickly, whereas our first baseman, he's just there. He doesn't move, we just all throw the ball to him. And he said, it's just like the catcher. We use different gloves for different functions. Now we're getting somewhere. See, you can think of the radio of your wireless access point just like the water pressure coming out of the hose at your home. Doesn't matter what hose you put on there or how you configure it, the water pressure is always the same. And the radio of your WAP is government regulated. It can only be so powerful. Even though the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz is an unlicensed space, meaning anybody can use it, they have rules of how powerful the radio can be so you don't have people intentionally or unintentionally sabotaging that space and making it unusable for other people. So what do you do if you want more pressure out of your garden hose? Well, you stick your thumb over it. That's exactly what an antenna does. It is the radiator and the catcher of the signal. In this case, we're changing the radiation pattern of our hose from this big glob of water that just kind of oozes its way out of there into a pretty powerful stream. And this is almost exactly what different antennas do on your WAP, is instead of having this general blob of wireless signal that comes out all the way around, we direct that signal into a way more powerful stream. This is known as increasing the gain of your wireless signal. And the amount of gain increase that you're going to receive is really dictated by the antenna that you choose. Let's go back to our hose analogy. I want you to think of the radio inside of your WAP like the city water supply coming into your house without any spigot at all. It's just a big hole in the ground, right? What's going to happen? It's just going to kind of ooze out on your lawn. You have to have some kind of spigot to focus it. And when it comes to our wireless access point, most people will choose an omnidirectional antenna, at least for indoor wireless access points. Now, it's a misnomer to think that an omnidirectional antenna doesn't focus your energy. It does. It radiates more from side to side or horizontally than it does vertically. We'll see that when we get to antenna radiation patterns in just a moment. The fact is, most omnidirectional antennas will give you a 2.14 dB gain. Oh boy, what's that mean? Now, we talked about this earlier in the series, but it's totally worth repeating. You can measure wireless signals in terms of power, how much power your device is receiving, but that amount is so low, you would have to say, well, my signal strength is, 0.0001429, and everybody would be like, what does that mean? Likewise, power is a logarithmic function, so it goes wildly all over the place. So Alexander Graham Bell back in the day created a relative system of measuring power that they call the Bell system. One bell measured an increase or a decrease in signal strength by a power of 10. And most people were like, wow, that's a big jump. So they created the decibel, which is 1/10 of a bell, to measure smaller increases in power. Now, I can tell you right now, you don't want to get into the math behind this. And I'm going to give you a shortcut right now that you will want to keep plastered across whatever documentation you use. You might even tattoo this thing on your arm. A power increase of 3 dB is really twice the signal strength. In the same way, a power rating of negative 3 dB is really half the signal strength. A power rating of plus 10 dB is really 10 times as strong. A negative 10 dB, you got it, 1/10 the signal strength. That's what I want you to tattoo on your arm. It'll keep you from having to get into any of the advanced math needed to convert from power to decibels. Now, I know some of you are looking at those figures and going, well, twice as strong as what? Or 10 times as strong as what? Well, from an isotropic antenna, of course. What? What is that? Well, an isotropic antenna is an imaginary antenna that doesn't actually exist in the real world. This mythical antenna has the power of being able to radiate wireless signal equally in all directions. And these two plane patterns is how we draw it out on paper. That's what's called an azimuth plane pattern. See, when they were trying to describe wireless signal, they ran into some difficulties because it's a three-dimensional image. If you're looking at a WAP, it radiates signal out this way, and this way, and this way, and this way, all the way around. So you don't want to hire an artist every time you're trying to draw out wireless signal. So they divided it into two pieces, a horizontal piece and a vertical piece. Every azimuth plane pattern will show these two perspectives. Think of it as a two-dimensional way of representing what's really happening in a three-dimensional world. When you're looking at the horizontal slice, I want you to imagine that you're staring at a wireless access point from the top down, and you're seeing on the horizon, on the x-axis, how far that signal would go. With an isotropic antenna, it's going equally in all directions. Then you kind of rotate your body and you say, okay, well, let's look at it from a up and down perspective. And so you take a slice out of this radiation pattern and you draw it up like this. And again, that isotropic antenna is radiating equally up and down as well. This is what's known as a 0 dB gain. These little numbers are really hard to see on here, but deep inside that's a negative 40. As we get further out, we go to a negative 30, negative 20, negative 10, and negative 3. And on the very outside, you can't see it because I drew over it, is where it says 0. If we were to draw this radiation pattern and it actually went something like this, this would mean that our antenna provided a negative 20 dB gain. That would not be a good antenna. So if an isotropic antenna doesn't really exist, then technically neither does a true omnidirectional antenna. Omnidirectional meaning equally radiating in all directions. So most people call the indoor WAPs, or the WAPs that have the little antenna just sticking out of the back, they call those a rubber duck antenna or dipole antenna. They'll often say it's omnidirectional, but in reality, it's not. If you were to look at it from a horizontal plane, that's where you get the omnidirectional feel. But looking at it from that vertical plane, you realize that it's really not. Again, take the perspective of our little guy right here. He's getting hit square in the face with that signal as he's looking at the vertical beam because it's going out this direction, but then it's only going up a little bit up here. How much? Well, it looks like from the numbers, if I can try and compute those, it's somewhere between a negative 20 and negative 30 dBi. No, wait a sec, Jeremy. You don't just throw another term in there. You're right, and I won't. Let me explain. dBi is decibels as it relates to an isotropic antenna. Again, always remember, decibels is not a rating system in itself. It always is a comparison to something else. It's a way of saying how much better is it than, or how much worse is it than. And when you look at the vertical radiation pattern of an indoor wireless access point, it's really 20 or 30 decibels less than the imaginary isotropic antenna, dBi. So check this out. I'm going to go to Google and just type in wireless antenna gain. And sure enough, we've got some antennas that are right here. There's one. Let's look at this. 5.8 gigahertz, 27 dBi. Oh, there we go. 27 dBi die-cast aluminum reflector grid antenna. I don't see any azimuth patterns right here, but what that's telling you is this is a very directional, I mean, do you get the feeling? That's a very directional antenna. You're not going to get much radiation behind, above, or below. This is a little wireless cannon right here that's going to give you 27 dB more signal strength than an isotropic antenna. That's why they call it dBi. If you were to look at the tip of that thing and measure the wireless signal, that's like 30 times or almost 30 times as powerful, as if we just took that radio power and radiated it perfectly around the wireless access point. By the way, that's known as a Yagi style antenna. Let me show you this. Yagi radiation pattern. There we go. Yeah, look at that. You can see that big beam just shooting straight out up here. Here's one that goes horizontal and vertical. By the way, that's what a lot of Yagi antennas look like. On the left is our horizontal plane pattern. On the right is our elevation or our y-axis vertical plane pattern. This is what it would look like if we tried to draw it three-dimensionally every single time. Are you getting the feel for how these antennas work? The best thing I think you could do is right after this video, just start Googling azimuth patterns, just staring at it. Maybe even drawing a few on paper, because it takes a little while for that to soak in. Last thing I want to say, and I'm really just going to give it an honorable mention right here, is going back to our radios, a radio chain, that's a name somebody come up with for the combination of a radio and an antenna. So when you take your WAP and you have a little radio chip inside that's attached to a wire that comes up to an antenna that does whatever that antenna is intended to do, whatever radiation pattern it's got. That combination is called a radio chain. And our modern wireless access points will often have multiple radio chains inside of them. That means multiple radios and multiple antennas. And the beauty of that is that gives them the power to increase their capacity. You'll see wireless access points that have radio chains for both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. You'll see wireless access points that have different radios for the same frequency, and they can transmit and receive on both of those at the same time, thus increasing your overall capacity. As I promised, an honorable mention, right? You can dive really heavy into MIMO and determine how it increases your capacity, how it avoids interference. But for now, I want to get back to my mission statement for this nugget. You will understand the types of wireless antennas available and how to read antenna radiation patterns. You now have the information. You just have to let it soak in, go deep, and become knowledge. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.